Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Belmont Saga, Part 2, Chapter 16, the Astral Traveler. So last week, we were treated to a humorous exchange, at least I think it's humorous, where Stenstrom's parents are having a big old-fashioned Donnybrook, trying to decide what he is going to do with the rest of his life. And when you're coming from a big blue house like this one is, very aristocratic, lots of money, yada yada yada, you take these things, the money and the privilege and the programmability and the status, and you trade off a bit of freedom. So a lot of households of this type of station in the league, your parents will have a big hand in deciding what you do as far as occupation goes. Occupations are, for people like these, are kind of a afterthought. He doesn't have to grab a lunch bucket and a hard hat and go to work like the rest of us, like I do, You can pretty much do what you want with your life, but you really can't, because your parents are like, you're gonna do this because we don't want you screwing up our good name. Now, if you're a commoner like Lord Aram or Private Tara, you can do whatever you want. Nobody's gonna tell you what to do. If you do, you can just tell them to beep off and just flash the appropriate hand signal to demonstrate your disgust at them trying to tell you what to do. But when you're in the upper echelon, when you're blue, your parents kind of dictate what you want. And Stenstrom's dad, old Stenstrom the Older, wanted him to join the fleet. And with that desire, that comes with a fair amount of autonomy. He's not saying what you're going to do in the fleet, but he said, I would like you to join the fleet, and you can pick your own path within the fleet. Like, you can be a helmsman, or a navigator, or a comm, or you can be some sort of science officer, or the list is endless what you can do in the fleet. When he says, I'd like you to join the fleet, that's a fairly broad brush that he's handing Stenstrom. But his mother, Lady Jubilee, is like, oh, no, he's not joining the goddamn fleet. I hate the fleet. I stuck a knife in his chest to prevent him from joining the fleet. No, he's not going to do that. And then while they're having this fight, they're being audited by the league, this little bald guy. I kind of, in my head, I picture him as Napoleon Dynamite's brother. Kind of like that, just a meek, bald guy doing their taxes. And Jubilee starts asking him, you're an accountant, aren't you, you pathetic little man? And he's like, yes. And she's really talking down to him, and that's not uncommon, unfortunately, in the league. But she starts questioning, have you ever been shot at? Have you faced any of these particular perils? Have you ever had botulism? Blah, 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 blah. And he's like, no, nothing's like that ever happened. And then she gets it in her head, well, being an accountant sounds like a nice, safe profession for her son to do. And then once Lady Jubilee gets something in her head, it's in there and it's not coming out. So she would actually drag him into the garden in the middle of the night, put the knife in his chest again, and tell him, you will be an accountant. If you go to the schools, that's what you're going to study, accounting. So yeah, and then we see that the Sisterhood of Light has taken quite an interest in Stenstrom the Younger, and they're coming to him all the time for programmability. Basically, 10 or 20 will show up at a time and demand that he programmability with all of them. It's quite an honor, actually. It's not as romantic or fun as you think of, like, yeah, line them up, let's go. No, they're in control. They grab him by the brain and just do with him what they will, and he has vague images of this and that and the other, but they're basically calling the shots, and it's not necessarily a pleasant thing. You know, it's to have programmability, especially when you've got 20 or 30 to deal with. On a visit with Lily, he tells Lily, oh God, they're coming all the time. Coming, I mean, literally. And then she says, well, you need to get out. Because the sisters are supposed to follow basic protocol. And just coming to you all the time without any pre-arrangements, without parlay or discourse is pretty different. But if you were out in the league, they couldn't do that to you as easily. So, and then she says, you should go to school, go to college. And you gotta remember, up to this point, Stenstrom's basically been stuck at home his entire life. He's 19 at this point, and hasn't really seen much of the world. And then one time he did see something of the world, he almost got killed. So he's a very undeveloped person at this point, as far as that goes. But Lily holds a lot of sway with him, and what she says he'll often do. So he decides, okay, fine, I will go off to college and learn freaking accounting. So that's what we're going to tackle here in this chapter, Chapter 16, The Astral Traveler. There are 2 chapters here that deal with his school life. This one and the one after. And this one is a pretty short chapter. It's only 4 pages long, but the next one is 14 pages long. So that's, yeah, I mean, it's a... So we're just going to do this one and we'll be done. This will be a fairly short reading, and the next week we'll get to the big long one, which is, I think, is a pretty cool chapter, but yeah, who knows. In any event, let's proceed immediately. Part 2, Chapter 16, The Astral Traveler. With a fair amount of trepidation, Stenstrom enrolled in the University of Bern, far to the west in Vithland. The University of Bern was a rich, well-known school across the league. Not a school known for the sciences, as the University of Arden was, or for liberal arts, like the University of D. Bern was best known as a trade and business school. Many of the most successful traders and merchants across the league were alumni of the U of B. As typical, his house spared little expense for his maintenance and board. They bought him a lovely terraced apartment on a green near the university grounds, complete with several guest rooms so that they could visit often. They furnished the apartment with fine things and filled his closets with the best clothing. Though Stenstrom had dreamed of leaving home often when he was younger, to be free of his mother's leash, he immediately found himself badly homesick in his lovely apartment. He recalled many of his sisters, loudly rebellious at home, bemoaning their lack of freedom and clamoring to take flight, found themselves right back at home of their own volition once they came of age. He recalled his sister Lenta actually came to live at home even after she had been wed, she and her husband moving into her old bedroom. Belmont Manor was a nest that was soul-shattering to walk away from. There were also Calamy, Phaedra, Cormanda, and Io, who were often in attendance at home for months at a time. Lily was right. The grounds of his South Tyrol home and his family were all he'd ever known. He realized he truly didn't have a friend in the world and didn't have the first clue as to go about making one. He'd been taught to look at people twice, to mistrust and suspect treachery. The trusting little boy who was almost killed in Fox Park and Tyrol was gone. Strangers, he had learned, were the enemy, were in the employ of the enemy and doing the work of the enemy, whoever that was. From his terrace, he could see the school and the city buildings of Bern not far away. He saw the students coming and going and the floating traffic moving in an orderly fashion down the street. He saw groups of students milling about, laughing, talking and interacting with each other in a simple yet utterly alien fashion for him. None of his mother's sorcery had prepared him for this. To be a simple student, to be a citizen of the League. He saw young gentlemen wearing clothing of the style of Vith, Remnas, Xenon, and Hala, and he felt completely alone in his somber Tyrol clothes, having little, if any, idea how to go out and fit in. The last time he'd truly been out on his own was the Fox Park debacle, which he still didn't know if that had been real or simply an elaborate dream. He nearly hit the comm and called home for Mother to come and get him. After a bit of inner turmoil, he decided to go out and walk about the campus and get a feel for the place. He had to remember that he was no longer a little boy marching down the road with his possessions in a sack. He was no longer helpless. He walked down the stairs of his building and made his way onto the green, passing many groups of people. He felt out of place in his Tyrol clothes, not seeing anybody else in the familiar Tyrol jacket, leggings, and boots. The people seemed friendly enough as he wandered down the green, the ladies curtsying and the gentlemen tipping their hats. He thought to introduce himself several times, to strike up a conversation, but found himself with nothing to say and on the defensive. He continued on, eventually wandering deep into the mass of tightly packed campus buildings. He noticed his surroundings change a little. Everything seemed dark and quiet. He looked up at the early evening sky, and it wasn't a Canaan sky anymore. It was something else, a negative image of what it should be, peppered with unusual stars. He heard a strange wind and odd sounds, and after another few moments, the sky reverted to its normal cheery blue. He remembered a strange sky like that from his Fox Park dream and from the incident at Rustum Labyrinth. After 9 years of arcane study, he knew what it might be. The astral plane, a sort of pocket dimension that was always there but seldom noticed. It tended to warp the perceptions of any in close proximity to it, and therefore mundane things might appear unusual, such as the sky. The astral plane was difficult to access, daunting to navigate, and dangerous to traverse. According to his mother, the sisters made astral travel illegal centuries ago, though the Zappans sometimes still used it at their peril. Someone or something had just opened a threshold to the astral plane and then closed it. Part of him, still reminiscing in the Fox Park dream, wanted to run home and hide. The new man in him, however, refused. He would stand and face whatever it was. Something approached him from behind. He quickly turned. A lady wearing a summer gown beneath a knit sweater stood there, surprised by his abrupt turn. "Oh," she said, hand over her heart. You startled me." Stenstrom looked her over. She seemed innocent enough. "Your pardon," he said. She stood there for an awkward moment. This is my first year, and I was just exploring the grounds. Are you new here too?" Stenstrom didn't answer. She waited a reply, and when one didn't come, she rocked back and forth uncomfortably. My name is Corvine of Dan. I was trying to locate the student union, and I thought to have a bite of dinner there. This campus is quite large. Would you care to join me? Perhaps we could locate it together." "No." She blushed and adjusted the sleeves of her sweater. "Well, sorry then. Please have a good evening." She walked past him and continued around the side of the building. He felt a little crass for treating the girl in such a manner, and had a thought to follow her around the building and apologize. Still, someone or something had just opened an astral plane threshold in the immediate area, near enough to warp his perceptions, and her arrival seemed awfully well timed. He had a sudden feeling that he was in danger. Quickly, he faded into the shadows and hid by the side of the building. Someone came around the corner of the building just then. It was her. She'd returned. She walked right past where Stenstrom was standing and looked around. "Sir?" she said. "Sir, are you still here?" He noted she bore an odd smell with her this time. Not perfume, but something basic and primal. She smelled rather like a dog in heat, and he found himself drawn to it for some reason, aroused by it. She panned around, clearly wondering where he'd gone. She walked to the building's edge and looked some more, her neck bending from one side to the other. What was that smell? It was now more of a stench, filling his nostrils. He could barely contain himself. Her bearing changed. She straightened, seemed angry, poised, and rather sinister. She dug through her bag and produced a smoky vial from within, along with a small copper sphere. She set the sphere on the ground, unstoppered the vial, and poured out its contents, covering the sphere. She stood over it, waiting for something to happen. The sphere twitched all on its own and began rolling in his direction, picking up steady speed until it rolled off the walk into the shrubs nearby. The woman looked in his direction, not seeing him, but seemingly knowing he was there. She slowly reached into her bag, and when she pulled her hand out, she wore a form-fitting metal assembly around her knuckles. It appeared to be some sort of weapon. Stenstrom shook his hand, producing his marzible. He and the woman were engaged in a tense standoff, neither flinching, both ready to strike. At that moment, warning sirens went off all around campus. The skies darkened, and through the clouds came a terrifying rope-like tongue of a cyclone. It had appeared from nowhere and threatened to touch the ground right in the middle of the campus. Students from all over scattered for cover. The woman looked up, saw the cyclone, and scowled. She got something out of her sweater, and a gaping hole in the universe opened in front of her. The astral plane, he was sure of it. Things got dark, and the sky changed once again into a nightmare of itself. She had just opened a door to the astral plane. She took one last look in his direction, turned, and walked up the steps of a long bridge, her movements exaggerated, and she walked away into unfathomable chaos, her stride stretching off into the distance. The astral door closed. He just caught a glimpse of the lady moving down the bridge as the threshold sealed behind her. She was no longer wearing a gown and a sweater. She was wearing a gray suit and a broad-brimmed hat. And the frightening cyclone overhead that had everyone on the campus scrambling dissipated and vanished just as quickly as it had come. Since the incident with the astral traveler, he'd been doing research into the topic of the astral plane. He finally found some interesting reading. Planar bridge, QV, teleportation device. Any number of devices/artifacts used for rapid travel through the astral plane. The existence of the astral plane and its exact nature is currently in dispute, and no effort has been made to further the technology within League space. The planar bridge was first developed by the Zaffin branch of the House of Conwell in 00002 AX. When it was discovered, the Type 2 world they'd settled on was a planar world, often lapsing in and out of the astral plane. The astral bridge is an arcane pendant capable of opening a threshold to the astral plane and could be programmed to transport the user to a predetermined location. The assumed nature of the astral travel minimizes the considerations of speed and distance. Bearing is critical, and any slight deviation can cause an astral traveler using the bridge to become hopelessly lost. One of the effects of opening a threshold to the astral plane by way of planar bridge is a tendency to pull nearby objects into the astral plane, where they are lost forever. The effects upon perception for those near to the open threshold is said to vary. The Sisterhood of Light successfully blocked many key points of interest from astral incursion in 00021AX, thus rendering the use of the planar bridge for military purposes moot. Interesting. So given this information, he assumed that the woman whom he met on the green weeks earlier was using a planar bridge to travel via the astral plane. It made sense, given the odd appearance of the sky and the gray clothing she was revealed to be wearing. He assumed that she was the same woman who had attacked him in Fox Park, and again at the Labyrinth of Rustum as a boy. Whoever she was persistent. He set to work using his array of arcane books and knowledge. He knew from his reading that planar bridges were fairly easy to block. He created a number of cyan holy stones made of jasmine, carbolite, and wormwood. Such holy stones would prevent the incursion of thresholds from the astral plane and provide him protection. He then set them all over his apartment and all about the university, hiding them in gutters, alcoves, rooftops, and anywhere else he could find where they would be safe. He cleaned out a local silver shop of candlesticks, ashtrays, curios, and other such items, and used them to create a whole retinue of arcane devices and aids designed to detect the presence of the astral plane. Thus armed, and never without his Ents and Marzible, he could feel reasonably secure that whoever this woman was, she could no longer simply step out of thin air on a planar bridge, and he should be able to detect the astral plane upon her, should she come at him in disguise. He stayed wary, examining any who came near twice and 3 times, always waiting for his arcane astral plane detectors to come to life. They never did. As the semester began and he settled into school, no further incidents were noted, and, though never forgotten, the matter fell farther and farther back into his thoughts. And with that, we conclude Part 2, Chapter 16, The Astral Traveler. So, we get an answer for some of the odd events that have been plaguing Stenstrom throughout his young life, where the sky seems weird and everything around him seems weird. Apparently, it is an incursion of the astral plane. Someone has opened a threshold into the astral plane, and it messes with your perceptions or the way you perceive the world. You look up at the sky, and it looks not right, and so on and so forth. He's struggling to get his bearings at school. He sees all these people, and he has no idea how to join a group or introduce himself or make a friend. His life as a shut-in at Belmont Manor is telling in these early stages here. As he's exploring the university, once again the sky starts looking strange, and then he meets a girl who seems innocent enough, but he is wary of, and it turns out that she is apparently this woman in gray, in disguise, this woman he's seen throughout his life. And he always questions his sanity or what he's seeing. Is he dreaming? Is he seeing? Because the astral plane piece also kind of distorts your perceptions. You're not really quite sure if what you're seeing is real or not. And this woman always seems to step out of the astral plane. And then he finds out, he actually sees her open a door to the astral plane and walk across the astral plane, and is gone. And he did some research and discovers that she must be using something called a planar bridge, which you can use to open and close doorways to the astral plane, though it's dangerous. But they're also fairly easy to block, so he creates some holy stones that will prevent the opening of the astral plane. He used them at the beginning of the book as they explored the bridge, and he detected bits and pieces of the astral plane there, and he used these blue holy stones to knock out the astral plane. And that's what he's done here. He set them in his apartment, he set them about the university, so that this person, whoever it was, can't just come and go as they please using the astral plane. So there's that chapter. Next week, part 2, chapter 17, The Bones Club. We get a rousing chapter where he begins to make his way through college life and starts trying to join a group and fit in some way, shape, or form. The Bones Club. It's a long one. It's like 14 pages long. So we will tackle that next week. It's too long to stick in here because this would be well over an hour of reading. And nah. So until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.